Good afternoon. My name is Janet Justice, and I work in the Education and Events Department at FTD. I want to welcome you to our webinar titled Preparing for a Successful Holiday Season. Today, you will learn proven techniques to plan and execute a profitable holiday season for any size shop, big or small. FTD Education team member Tina Stoecker will be leading this informative webinar. Involved in the floral industry for more than 25 years, Tina combines creative design techniques with a common-sense business approach to manage a successful company. As the owner of 2 flower shops in Florida and a past president of the American Institute of Floral Designers, Tina has established herself as an inspiring force in the floral industry. Once Tina is finished with her presentation, we will open the webinar up for questions. If you have a question, simply type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen. We will take the questions in the order they are received. So without further ado, I would like to turn the call over to Tina to begin the webinar. Tina?
Thank you, Janet, and welcome to everybody that's online. I'd like to say that as we go through the webinar, I've got lots of different information in there and a lot of information. So if you have a question, just notate the slide number and write down your question so when we get to the end, we can get exactly to the slide and to the question that you need. With that said, let's take a look at preparing for a successful holiday season. Really, the first question, I guess, to ask is, what is a successful holiday season? And if you can see the picture to the right, I don't know if you remember the old I Love Lucy, where the candy starts to come out really slow, and then all of a sudden it gets faster and faster and faster until it's almost where they're just tossing it off the assembly belt. Well, that's kind of what a holiday is for the retail florist. And so to be successful, the couple of things we really need to look at, the key points are we profitable? Can we create a great experience for our clients so that they'll come back on non-holiday season? Will we manage the stress and overtime so that we have sanity at the end of the holiday? And can we overcome any obstacles, any last-minute issues? And the best way to start that is with planning. It's not that we fail to plan. It's not that we plan to fail. It's that we fail to plan. I mean, I talked to florists all over the country over the last 25 years doing education, and it's amazing. And I will ask them, how was your Christmas holiday? Oh, my gosh, it was insane. We did 1,000 deliveries. And I'll go, well, how many drivers did you have? Well, we had 2. Well, I know it felt like 1,000, but I doubt that it was 1,000. It was probably more like 100. So for me, planning starts to about 3 or 4 months out so that I can make those 100 orders feel very manageable. And the way that I do that is I review the last 2 years, and sometimes I'll look further back in trends if I want to see where the economics is taking us, whether there's an increase in sales or a decrease. I really want to look at 2 years or more. I'm going to calculate the workload. I want to look at how much staff I'm going to need. I want to look at my product selection. I want to produce a production schedule. And I want to create a marketing plan. So let's take a look at each one of these options and some of the tools that I've collected over the years that have been very helpful for me. Now, as we go through this, one of the things I want to share with you is that all of this information in the Excel sheets and the marketing items and all of the things that I use to plan our holidays here work for both the large store and our satellite store. But more than that, these are things that I've collected over 30 years worth of owning the flower shop. And I didn't start out with all 30 of these things. I started out with 1 or 2 and added them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think the first step to a successful holiday is to review the type of products that you sell. And I'm looking at reviewing the number of units sold, not necessarily the total dollar sales volume. And the reason for this is you want to look for different items that you sell a lot of that are kind of somewhat generic. And in the example on the screen, which is, if you look here, you'll notice that we have vases in large and medium, petite and small. And I can look at that and go, well, I have 24 medium vases, so for the holiday I'm going to prep 24 vases and get them ready to go, and I'm going to have 6 large. I can get all of these items out of the way prior to the holiday and produce them and not wait for the orders to show up and then make them. So it's about being proactive. Know what you sell and generate those products earlier in the week so when you're crazy at the end of the week, closer to the holiday, you can just tag them. I know this seems like a very basic thing, but I think it's always good to go over it. One of the other things I'd like for you to take note of is the funeral baskets. Notice that we have information here about funeral. Some holidays, if you look just at the dollar total and you look from year to year and you go, oh, that was a good holiday, or oh, that was a bad holiday. And when in all actuality, it could have been a funeral or wedding that affected it. So take special notation of whether there was funeral or weddings involved in that holiday planning. The other thing that you're going to want to take a look at is the categories that are important to that holiday. I left roses in here only because of Valentine's Day. If this was a Valentine's Day holiday, I'd want to look at how many dozen long stem, medium, and short I sold in any given category. Now, if you don't have a computer point of sale system, this can be easily done, and this is what we used to do years before we had a POS system, was we would just simply take a basket and mark down how many vases we sold, how many baskets we sold, how many roses we sold, balloons, blooming plants, and dish gardens. Again, it's about getting real-time information. After we've reviewed what we've sold, we want to take a look at reviewing the sales by day. Now, when we review the sales by day, the holidays that rotate, like Valentine's Day and Christmas, now this just happens to be a breakdown of Christmas, and generally when I'm doing this, I put it into an Excel sheet, but you can just simply handwrite the days of the week. Now, if we look over here, this is Christmas holiday really is from the 1st of December to pretty much the 30th of December, depending upon how your after Christmas holiday sales are. But generally it starts about the 18th of December. On the 18th, 19th is when the rush starts to go. Now, a couple different points to keep in mind is where that Saturday and Sunday fall, because that will give you an idea of how the rush is going to be. A couple things that I like to look at is when I have it the Saturday or Sunday fall close to the 24th, one of the things I like to keep in mind as the week builds, you start to build momentum. Whereas if you go to 2009, that momentum gets broken up between the Saturday and Sunday, and it has to do, that means that following Monday is going to be a lot higher. So if you look at the 22nd and go across, when it's on a Saturday at 67, because that momentum was broken, the Monday after that is going to be significantly higher. Those are things you really want to take a look at so that you're not caught off guard. And then, of course, I usually average those 2 to 3 years to look what the trend is. But just always keeping in mind what the heaviest day is so that you're not caught off guard with drivers or design or sales staff. When you do this projection, I usually like to make any kind of special notes about weather. I know we don't really get snowstorms here, but I know northern states do. But if you had staff that was out sick, if we had a hurricane, if we had a major employer in the area closing, all of those things are what you want to take a look at when you're looking at that weekly projection. Really, it's just a basic information to kind of give you a feel of what day, the ebb and flow of deliveries, the ebb and flow of orders. If you look, the first column here has the number of sales. That doesn't necessarily equate to the number of deliveries. And the reason for that is that we may take an order, we may take 70 orders on the 19th. 70 of those orders, only 51 may be going out that day. The other 20-some may going out another day. So that's why it's important to look at the number of sales you do and the number of deliveries, because those are two separate functions. I know this is probably pretty basic for the majority of you, but I always think it's worth mentioning. My favorite thing to do, and the one that I use the most often, is the sales by hour. I use this on a regular basis and especially at a holiday. And essentially what I'm doing is looking at the time span the orders come in. Now, again, we have a POS system, so it's very easy for us to pull this data. If you don't, simply just leave a piece of paper by your cash register with the time slots listed on it, the 9 to 10 a.m., and as the orders are taken by the phones, you just tick it off. As they are taken over the walk-in or point of sale, you just tick it off. Now, why this is important is we want to really take a look at this lunch hour time, because, all florists, from the time you walk in at 9 a.m., you're all planning what you want for lunch, me included, and you want to schedule your staff so that they can actually have a lunch break, whether it's 15, 30 minutes, to get recharged and get rehydrated and ready to work. So you want to look around that lunch hour so you can schedule lunch hours. But more importantly, you want to look at when you need to bring staff in. Now, generally, in the old days, when I first opened my store in '82, I would actually just take someone come in at 9 and they had to work till 6 o'clock. Now I don't necessarily do that. I mean, after 7 years of doing things completely wrong, I learned that I don't have to do that. I can schedule them during my peaks and valleys. So even back before we had a regular point-of-sale system, we did that little tick systems piece of paper with a little tick mark on it so that we knew when the high volume times of the day were. Now, I like to calculate the number of staff that I'm going to need at any given time. And if you notice at the bottom, this is just the calculation for this. I take the number of orders, and in this case, I'm looking at that 12 to 1 time period. And I take the number of orders, which was 19, and I multiply it by 10 minutes. Now, you may be wondering why I chose 10 minutes. The reason for 10 minutes is it usually takes 3 minutes to take an incoming wire order, 7 minutes to take a local order, and about 12 minutes to take an outgoing wire order. If you average those in, I think a good safe quantity for minutes to take an order is about 10. If I multiply that number of orders times the number of minutes, I get 190 minutes. I'm going to take those 190 minutes and divide it by 60 minutes in an hour, and it's going to tell me that I'm going to need 3 staff members on the floor or on the phones during that time span. So although this seems like a lot of math, once you've done it once, you'll find that it's just very smooth the next time. The next thing is to calculate the workload. And we're going to look at the number of units, just like you did in the previous example, and you're going to multiply it by 10 minutes. Generally, industry standard is a designer should be able to produce an arrangement every 15 minutes. At holidays, it's a little bit quicker because they're, first of all, doing multiples, and second of all, their main focus is design the whole time. Then in the step 2, I'm going to take the total number of minutes here and divide it by 60, and that's going to give me my staff hours. In an example, you see 123 units by 10 minutes gives you the minutes. I'm going to take that 30 minutes and divide it by an hour, and it's going to tell me I'm going to need 20.5 staff hours to complete 123 units. I know, again, this sounds like a lot of math and something that you may choose to do or not to do, but we're going to talk about this design element a little bit later in the webinar and see possible ways to shorten that time length. When it comes to delivery, generally, depending upon the size of your zones, you're going to be able to get 25 to 40 deliveries. I invite you to take a look at those numbers very closely. We're going to talk about delivery a little bit later on in the presentation. On an average day, most of your designer delivery personnel will do about 15 minutes per delivery, and that will shorten to about 10 minutes per delivery on a holiday. Again, this depends upon how large your zones are. Generally, UPS requires their drivers to do about 100 deliveries or pickups per day. The difference is they're in a very small segmented area. And I know years ago there's a mobile home park that's not too far from us, and we used to be able to do 100 deliveries. One driver could a day, and the reason was they'd go up and down the street and deliver 6 deliveries on that same street. Unfortunately, those days have come and gone. As our area has grown, as I'm sure you all has, the deliveries get further and further apart. As we move to product selection, we're going to talk a little bit about what you want to make for the holiday. Now, on the example on the screen, you'll notice that this is one of our sales sheets. What we do during the holiday for the sales process to make it a little bit smoother is we limit the amount of products we sell. Whether it's in-store, on the website, or over the phone, we're going to use these limited amount of products for the staff to sell. Now, that's not going to exclude, Great Aunt May who calls and she wants a vase with 3 stargazers and 4 roses and, 1 bit of Caspian, 1 bit of baby's breath, and 1 pink rose in the center. I mean, you're going to get those orders, obviously, but that'll be the minority of them. What you really want to do to get that product finished, completed, produce a quality product is to limit the amount of product you sell. Now, generally we do this from the standpoint of on the sales call when a client comes in or walks in. We're taking the basic information and we get to the portion where we have to ask them what they want to send, and instead of saying, what would you like to send, we will say, do you have a gift in mind, or would you like me to make a suggestion? Generally, the client will say, well, can you make a suggestion? And we'll say something, well, we've got, my favorite one is the 11M2. That's the spring garden bouquet, and we have it in standard, deluxe, and premium. Usually after you give them 1 or 2 choices, they will choose what you suggest. This allows us to sell down our product. If we buy these containers, we can sell them and get them rid of out the door. What I would caution you to do, as these sales sheets are posted usually on our front counter, they're posted by every phone. They're actually in the cooler, so when a customer goes in, they can see the item next to the arrangement. And usually, some point during the holiday, you're going to sell out of that product. What's great is you can pretty much X through it, and sales staff knows that it's sold out. And when a client calls on it, and they say, oh, well, I really wanted that spring garden you sent me a mailer on. I really would like that one. Well, not a problem. We can do a similar arrangement in a similar vase, and it helps the sales process, gets the client what they want. We want to talk about calculating. We've chosen our product. Now we need to make a profit on it. And this is the hardest part. You know, every day we should make a profit, but at holidays especially, when you go through all that stress and strain, you want to make sure that when you get to the end of that holiday week and you're dead tired, that you have really made a great profit. So there are several things I'd like to share with you in this respect. We're going to switch to an Excel sheet in a moment. But you want to select the products. Select those. I normally don't select any more than 13 items that we push during the holiday. We use a recipe so that the designers know exactly what goes in it, and that controls and generates my profit. And we use those recipes to calculate the product. Now, that we've talked about that, let's take a look at some of the items that I use to do that, to calculate those. First thing I'd like to share with you is a very simple Excel sheet that for some reason just doesn't want to come right up here. Let's just find it real quick. Isn't this exciting? Y'all get to see what I have in my documents. And there it should be coming up. Okay. Unless, of course, it doesn't want to come up. There we go. Apologize for that. This is a list of the recipes. Now, if I can show you, first of all, this and this Excel sheet will be available on FTDI.website under Educational Handouts, and you'll be happy to download it. The first thing I do is I make a list of all the products that we normally would carry, and as you can see, I've got everything in there from agapanthus all the way to the letter Z. And I have a wholesale price point on it. And you can put any information you want in here. These product codes are just product codes I came up with only because if I wanted to type in agapanthus, I can never remember how to spell it, so I can remember that the first 3 letters of agapanthus are AGA. So that price list is always in there. I can change that price list by simply doing a multiplication of the column by increasing all of the prices in there by 10%, 20%, depending upon what the market's doing. The next thing I do is I'm going to create the recipes for it. And in the example, you'll see that I have 11C1, that I have 36 of them. It's got a lily, and there's 2 of them, and it's white. And what the price is, what the total, because I have 2 stems. And it tells me that's $3, and that I'm going to need 72 of those stems right here, because 36 times 2 stems is 72. Now, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but in a moment, hopefully it will. Let me show you an example of how this works. If I look at Santa, and I'm going to put the quantity in as 24, and I'm going to tell it that there are roses in there, and they're 40 centimeter. It's going to go over to the price list sheet, and it's going to pull up roses 40 centimeters right here, and it's going to tell me they're going to be 65 cents. Now, I have to tell it how many I want in there. I'm going to tell it I want 5 of them in there. And when I do, it's going to multiply the price at 320. It's also going to tell me if I'm going to do 24 of them, that there'll be 120 stems that I'll need. The next thing I need to tell it is what color, which is red. I'm also going to tell it that I need spray roses in there, and I'm going to use 2 stems, and they're going to be white. I'm going to use Christmas greens in there, one setup. Of course, I don't need the color on that. And then there's no other product, and I just do NP for no product. You can do whatever you want, type in there, but I'm just telling it that there's no more product that I want to calculate. I've already put the labor in there, but it's important to note that this is wholesale cost of labor. Our labor per design is $8.75, and that this is the price of the supplies, and then I'm going to put the wholesale cost of the container in there. And it's going to automatically calculate the retail value. Now I have my stem counts here, and if I look at the last spreadsheet in here, it'll show me the product order. And right now it's telling me that I need 72 stems of white lily Asiatic, 180 stems of red 40-centimeter roses, and if it needed leather leaf or greens, those items would be in there as well. And I need 24 put-ups for Christmas greens. So I hope that you'll find that helpful. For me, it's one of the quickest ways for me to price things, because I can go over here to recipes if I'm doing an in-house recipe and say, you know what, I only want to use, instead of 5 roses, I'm going to use 3 in there. And I'm only going to use 2 pieces of leather leaf and 1 Christmas green. And it'll automatically adjust the price here so I can hit my suggested retail price. You can change the markup at any time. You can change the wholesale prices at any time. It's an extremely useful tool when you're calculating whether it's wedding, holiday, whichever. It's just a great way to price everything out and keep a standard price list. So with that said, we've calculated the product, and with that product order that we looked at, that last sheet, you can decide what day you want that product shipped in. And from that, you can generate a production schedule. Now, for me, a production schedule isn't some Excel sheet or some big massive thing. It's really just deciding what day I'm going to produce what items. Now, for me, I'm close enough to Miami, I can ship things in really, really easy. So I can ship product in and generally do the day before I need it. But for some florists, I know that they only get 1 shipment a week. If that's the case, and you only get 1 shipment a week, and you've pre-ordered your product 6 weeks in advance from that product order sheet we just reviewed, then what you can do when that product comes in, just get a piece of paper and in big, with a black magic marker, tape it on the end of the box, what's in each individual box, so that when you're ready to use it, you're ready to use it. And the reason I say that is because generally when it comes to production schedule, I'm going to look at those 13 items that we've decided to produce for the holiday. And the majority of them probably will be vase work, and I'm going to do the vase work first. And then I'm going to do any foam designs, anything that's in floral foam. And the reason I do that is because I am not going to unpack those boxes and process those flowers. I'm going to leave them in the boxes in the cold, in the cooler. And when I'm ready to use it, I'm going to pull out the box. It's all 40-centimeter red roses, and I'm going to start using those and put them directly into the vases. I know this sounds like, oh, panic attack, because you've been taught so much about, care and handling. Well, think about it. If you're using a product like Crystal Clear, which is keeps the vase clear as well as a holding solution for the product, what's the difference from holding it in the cooler than it is in that vase in the cooler? So I do the vase work first, then I do the foam designs. I receive the flowers and the day before, and I don't process them. Right there, not processing has saved me 3 people on staff that aren't standing all day long processing the flowers. And if I process them and put them in the cooler, and they start to open up, they get damaged, people brush across them, whereas if I take them right out of the box, put them right into the vase arrangements, they mature in the vase, and they actually make a beautiful design. I usually begin production work about 7 days before the holiday, but I have plenty of storage here. I have a regular cooler and then a backup cooler. You may need to adjust that a little bit based on what storage you have, or if you can do a planogram and find areas in your shop that you can store, keep things cool for those 7 days. We work 5 days on assembly line product, which is that product selection we talked about, those 13 items. And then the last 2 days, my designers are free to do anything that's odd, because those first 5 days were assembly line product, and as we make these, we're tagging them. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more when we get further down into the presentation. Part of that planning process is marketing, obviously, because you can create, have the best shop in the world, but unless someone knows about it, then they're not going to buy. So when we start marketing for a holiday, I look at the total sales volume of the previous holiday, and I choose about 3 to 7% of those holiday sales projected, obviously, because in today's economy you want to look at what your trend is. If your trend's been upward in sales, bless you. If you're like the rest of us, we've been kind of flatlined. Sometimes we dip, sometimes we go up. So you want to look at those projected sales, and you want to calculate 3 to 7% of that, and that's what you're going to use for marketing for the holiday. If you don't market any other time, I would recommend that you market during the holiday, and the reason for that is you want to go fishing when the fish are biting. Now, for me, 3 to 7% is because I'm an aggressive marketer. You may choose to do 2 to 3%, which is more industry standard. And once I come up with that dollar volume, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide that budget by the type of media I'm going to use. In the majority of cases, it's direct mail and email, but I wanted to list the radio and television because we do use those depending upon the holiday. And this is a good time to talk about holidays and how they are so different. I mean, Thanksgiving's a holiday, but it's kind of like a busy day holiday where, you just have a fluctuation in design. And that's where we use a lot of this postcards and direct mail, because as you can see, we're letting them know if they purchase a local order, they get 10% off if they order for this Easter. Because I consider Thanksgiving and Easter very slow holidays. In my area of the country, it may not be so in yours, but in ours, Thanksgiving, Christmas have a tendency to be slow. I want to give them that extra incentive to purchase, and one of the ways to do that is by using that 10% off or free wire service for them to send out of town. So during the Thanksgiving, Christmas, we would generally do direct mail and email. Where radio works really well is Administrative Week and Valentine's Day, because it is an immediate response. If you put something on the radio, the sales that you generate from that are someone that's listening and they immediately take action. Television we use quite regularly, but that's mostly to be visual because we're a visual business and it gives us a lot of credibility. One of the best marketing, if I can leave you with one thing and plead and beg with you to do, I think you will find this the best example of marketing for holiday. And this is a letter that goes out. Now, I know I actually got this from my wholesaler whose family owned a flower shop in, I think, New Jersey. And when they owned the flower shop years and years ago, they would actually make sales calls 3 weeks before Mother's Day and say, Mother's Day is coming up, or Valentine's Day is coming up. I can go ahead and take your order now. And this is an example of doing that, but just with a direct mail piece. And what essentially it's doing is I'm trying to take all those customers, my best customers who call at 4 o'clock on Saturday and want something sent to Topeka, Kansas, and I know that Topeka, Kansas, I'm not getting an order out. And this way, I don't have to say no to them. I can get their orders taken care of earlier. And the way I do that is by giving them an early order discount or an incentive. If they place the order like the week before Mother's Day or 2 weeks before Mother's Day, I can get them they get $3 off, and I can get the order in-house and get it processed. Now, I generate this list from any customer who bought last year for the holiday. And for me, it's pretty seamless on a computerized system, but if you don't have one, all you need to do is print something like this up. You notice there's no Dear Jane or anything. It's just a simple letter. And then look last year at the customer's address, fill out an envelope and send it to them, or pick up the phone and call. But usually I choose people that sent last year. I want to make sure that I get anybody that sent last time because I know they're a flower buyer for the same holiday. Then I want to take my 100 top customers, the ones that I really want to take excellent care of. I'm going to take those top customers, and that's by units, not by dollars sold. And the reason for that is because someone comes in and does a wedding, of course they're going to pop up as, a top customer because they paid a lot of money, but they may have only bought once. So you really want to take a look at the amount of orders, the number of times that they've ordered, so in essence the units that they've purchased. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you do this particular marketing, which is the one thing, if I could get you to do this type of homework when you get off the phone and this is what you do, I'd be so happy. You can send me a note and I'll give you a little A on your report card. But the one thing about this is it's moving that sales time to a part of non-holiday. So instead of having all those calls and having to take your phone off the hook during Mother's Day or Valentine's Day, you've taken those orders in advance, and therefore you save a lot of sales time at the beginning of the holiday. The important thing to remember about marketing is you have to remind the customer to purchase. We know when Valentine's Day is. We know Mother's Day is the second Sunday in May. We know Father's Day is the second Sunday in May. We know that, Christmas, shut-off time is going to be the 23rd. We're very aware of this because we're florists. But customers are not. Our clients are used to purchasing not only flowers, but they're used to purchasing other items, so you need to remind them to constantly buy flowers. And a simple little handout will do that for you. It also, as we talked about in the very first slides, is limiting your product selection. This is what you're doing. You're limiting your product selection by giving them a direct mail piece, something in their hand, or an email promo that says these are the items that are the hot sellers. This is what you need to buy. So now that we've gone through the planning, I'd like to leave you with a little bit of homework. And this homework is downloadable to the website, from the website. And really kind of just quickly make a list of your arrangements. You want to limit your product. You want to create those recipes so you're going to make that profit. You want to make a holiday sales reminder letter, because that's my top hit on things of homework you should do, and review your peak holiday plan schedules. I know I've gone over a whole lot of stuff, but the thing is these are the top 5 things that I would recommend when planning your holiday. Now that we've planned the holiday, we need to prepare for it. And one of the ways to do that is to generate a checkoff list. I guess maybe it's a sign of old age, to a point that I have to write everything down and put Post-it notes all over me. But I find these checkoff lists extremely helpful for myself and be able to delegate to staff. And for the smaller branch, the staff is 2 people. So even for them, it keeps those 2 people in line who's done what. And this is what the checkoff list is for. We usually hold a staff meeting. It's nothing elaborate. We provide training and we create a backup plan. So let's look a little bit at preparation. And most of this I do about 30 days out. First thing I'm going to do is prep all my containers. And if you walked in my showroom today, you would certainly see our back showroom is similar to this, where, not showroom, but our work area, where everything's prepped in advance. And so when it comes to holiday, what I'd really love for everybody to kind of keep in mind is when those codified containers come in, if they take floral foam, go ahead and glue the floral foam in and put them back in the box. Make sure the picks and the cards are in the picks. You know, it's like a 2-second job when you're designing, but if you add up all those 2 seconds, it takes a great deal of time. So I recommend that you prep all your containers together. Clean and organize your work area is extremely important, not only from the reason of you want to be able to have workspace to work in, but also from a workman's comp situation. I think every time I've had 2 workman's comp claims in 30 years, and both of them were during holidays because we left a box sitting out somewhere and someone tripped over it. So for safety reasons alone, you want to clean and organize your work area. Create a lunch schedule for your staff, and the reason for this is that you ever notice at the end of the day it's 4 o'clock and someone hasn't taken their lunch break. I know it's difficult to let them off the floor, but they'll be much more efficient if you do that scheduled lunch break. And define what time you want them, it's a 30-minute lunch break. For us, we decide, the first thing that happens on a regular basis when someone walks in at 9 o'clock in the middle of the summer, we all start talking, okay, what are we having for lunch today? Well, the same thing can happen at the holiday, and I really want to limit the amount of time that my staff chit-chat about that. I also want to limit the amount of time, I'm on the phone with a wholesaler. All of those little bitty minutes add up to hours that create overtime. So we decide well in advance what the menu is going to be, if it's going to be catered or if we're going to do homemade meals. And in most cases, someone will bring in, like I'll make meatball in a crock pot, and we'll bring in rolls, and we'll have meatball subs. In addition to that, we're going to, all those little small jobs that you end up doing during the holidays, like restocking your coin change from the bank, go ahead and get that a week before the holiday. These are all important items to do right before the holiday gets here and not have to do them in peak holiday time. As we move on to the checkoff list, which is to me one of the most valuable tools that we have on an everyday basis, and especially so at a holiday, is we just have a list of every hard good that we normally keep in stock in the shop. Bud bases, cardettes, care tags, plant baskets, any of the funeral items, wire, ribbon, corsage pins, corsage boxes, anything along that line. We have a typed Excel sheet that prints out. It's 8.5 by 11, one piece of paper, and it doesn't need to be me. It could be one of the high school students comes in about a month before the holidays, 30 days out. I'm going to have them go through and highlight anything we're low on, whether it's food, care instructions, anything along that line. I highlight it, then I have a quick list I can order from. That way there's no last-minute panic before, during the holiday that, oh my gosh, we ran out of cardettes, we have no way to put our cards. The other things that we put on here are things like paper that goes through our printer, our enclosure cards, all those little items that have a tendency to kind of slip through the cracks, and then at the holiday you're going, oh my gosh, I don't have a casket saddle to make a casket spray. The next thing we do during the preparation process is we hold a staff meeting. Again, it's nothing outrageous, and it's usually about 2 weeks prior to the holiday. The reason for that 2 weeks prior is I don't want to go a month before because I'll forget everything we talked about at the staff meeting. And I don't want to go too close to the holiday because that kind of builds on the hours for the holiday week. In addition to that, I think it's just you need that week rest before a holiday starts. What we do during that staff meeting is we review the notes from previous holidays. And that would be focusing on any trouble spots. One of the prime examples I could give you in this area is Valentine's Day. When we know that Valentine's Day falls on let's say a Thursday, and that's a day of work, we're going to want to focus our sales staff and our delivery staff and all staff on the idea that when a customer calls in, we need to be extremely proactive. If we had past problems with either substitution or not getting orders there on time because we didn't know it was a business, then we're going to focus during this staff meeting on those trouble areas that are in my diary that say, okay, we missed we had a lot of short catch-up times before we got a business delivery. So then we say, okay, at the staff meeting, this is a question I want you to ask when you do the sales process, and that'll be on their sales sheet. It'll say, this is going to Jan Smith. She's at 2175 New Haven Avenue, and then the sales staff would go, oh, is this a business address? And they'll say, no, it's not. Or they'll say, yes, it is. If they say, yes, it is, what's the name of the company and what hours does she work? We're being proactive, dragging the information out of the client because they don't realize, they assume that when they place the order, 2 days before that Valentine's Day at 9:01, their delivery is going to be made. In addition to that, we use this as a time to conduct a sales primer so that we can focus on the 13 items that we're going to sell. And we're going to talk about our sales script that we normally use and just reiterate the problem areas in the sales script and or things about express delivery and if they're available and what they cost. The next thing we're going to talk about is pecking order. For us, it's very difficult because we have an open design arena where when the customers come in, they can actually see the designers. And other times it has not been that way. Whether you're open or whether designers in the back room, you don't want the designer off the design table. You want them actually be able to get those arrangements done. But when a customer comes in and someone else is in the middle of making a bow, you want that staff member to understand it doesn't matter whether you're making a bow, you need to drop the bow and wait on the customer because you're the first person in pecking order for waiting on customer. So we choose who's the first person to wait on customer every day and who's the first person that walks to the phones every day. And we reiterate during this meeting that designers need to stay on the tables. We talk about lunch breaks and what their scheduled time is, that you go between 11 and 11:30, you go between 11:15 and 11:45. You miss your lunch break, that's your responsibility, because it's not my responsibility to keep up after you during the holiday. We talk about time deliveries, what the express delivery fee would be. We remind them that it's when a time delivery is taken, that it's not just about getting the drivers back to get the time delivery, but it's about stopping designers, the office staff, the designer, and the delivery person. And we mention any of those promotions. If there's an early order discount letter sitting out there, we talk about that and how to put the code in. We also provide staff, training for staff, and for that we again review our complaint log. If we were having complaints about order value, then we talk a little bit about, well, we should make sure that you recommend small, medium, and large, and so that you give the customer who's calling over the phone a visual of what size the bouquet is. Or you steer them away from maybe possibly the little square cubes if they said, well, what I got last year just didn't look like the money. Then you send them to like maybe a small vase or a medium vase where they're going to look a little bit more higher in value. But if because for the majority of the time when they pick that on our website, then it says the sizes on there, but during the complaint log, if you see a lot of that going on, then you're going to want to say to staff, okay, as a primer, let's make sure that we reiterate to them on the phone that this is 9 inches high and give them an alternate selection. And that's part of generating those best practices to solve complaints in advance and being very proactive of how you sell. For drivers, we actually have just a printed sheet that our drivers have been with us for a long time, but they have that sheet with them. For temporary drivers, they get the sheet as well, and it has the best delivery practices. What do you do if you get out into the area and no one's home? and it tells them you need to go to the neighbor on the left hand and right hand, tag the door, call and leave a phone message. If they have to bring it back, what the procedure for that is. If they get out and they can't find a street, what the procedure for that is as well. We actually use Kelly Services outsourcing and have in the past. And generally when we're using Kelly Services, they will actually have them come in for like an hour training if you need them to. But generally we don't normally do that because we keep them on a very limited jobs. They do phone sales, but they don't do outgoing wire sales, and they don't do incoming. They essentially do local scale sales, and they have a phone script they have to go by. And I would recommend if you do decide to use Kelly Services or any of those temp services that you make sure that you keep those temporary staff on phone sales alone, because if you choose to have them wait on customers in the front, the issue you'll find with that is that Kelly Services or any of them will charge you a higher rate per hour. And the reason for that is because they're doing a cash transaction, and there's more liability for Kelly Services and or the temp services if one of their staff members is doing a cash transaction. A lot of places that we outsource through are churches, schools, local service organizations. The great thing about it is those people were tickled to come work in the flower shop, and they'll come in for a few hours here and there, and you can really fill in those time slots that you're having difficulty, like that morning rush till 1, and then they're done, and then go pick up their kid from school, and it gives them a little bit of time to do this, that, and the other. I recommend when you bring them in for training that you pick very limited jobs, small things to do, and if you have them on phone sales, to make sure you have a phone script. Usually most of the point of sale system, or if they're just handwriting the ticket, simply just having a handwritten ticket with the areas highlighted with a highlighter that they have to have will help them get through the sales process with a sales script. Create a backup plan is extremely important for us on delivery. We always get 1 or 2 more drivers than we actually need. And the reason for that is we've used the same temporary drivers for probably 10 years. And they are tickled to come work at the holidays. But sometimes something will come up like, their daughter's birthday or, Great Aunt May's retirement party, and they forget to call us because we schedule them so far in advance. So make sure that you take those total number of deliveries, as we talked about earlier in the slide, divide it by the medium of deliveries you think they can do, if that's 25, 40, and they'll give you the quantity of drivers you need. Add 1 or 2 to it. It is much better to have your deliveries done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a majority of what ends up happening here at the store. It's very rare that we go to 5 o'clock on deliveries. I'd much rather have one small area for the driver, and trust me, so would they. Because what ends up happening is if you keep them in a small area, a small zone, they get more deliveries out and they use less gas. So they prefer to go home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, having made their deliveries using less gas. For us, we have a rental car agency profile already established, and the reason for that is if something happens to one of our regular delivery vehicles and we need a delivery vehicle as soon as possible, we can just call the agency and go pick it up. There's no filling out the forms or all of that rigmarole, and that's what used to happen to us in the past. All of a sudden we'd need a rental car, and we'd spend an hour to 2 hours getting that taken care of during peak time when every second counts. We have never employed this, but I have had a lot of shops that tell me this works really well for them, and that's contacting a taxi or a package company for possible delivery overflow. So if you've got a taxi company in town, or even one of those companies that runs errands, those are great resources for getting deliveries made. When it comes to design, and we're going to talk about assembly line in a few more slides, but for us, we employ an assembly line, and that is a great help for us. But one of the other things that we found that's been extremely helpful is holding monthly design classes. We generate some income from it, but it also gives me a pool of design workers for temporary help during the holiday. And we have used that over and over and over again. I've had people who attend the design class take a day off of work to come make roses, one right after the other, during Valentine's Day. And the third suggestion under a backup plan is to be able to have your wholesaler purchase pre-made bouquets that you can just chop and drop in there for maybe those small, $35, $45 vases that you sell a lot of mixed of. When it comes to product, we generally place our order 6 to 8 weeks before the holiday, and usually it's more like 8 weeks. We sell open orders so that the customer knows that if they don't have the exact item, that there'll be possible substitutions. We create our own in-house specials, and we don't use premium products, which means for us we don't use, if the wire service specials have pink roses and pink spray roses, we're going to stay away from that. If it's Mother's Day, we're going to try to stay away from almost if it's a vase arrangement, it'll be yellows and lavenders and very few pink, just enough pink maybe in a few carnations or something that's not a premium need for the holiday. And I think you'll find that if you just trick it out with some kind of cute, either a bow or something along that line, or you find a specialty pink vase, then what ends up happening is your clients, you can sell your clients those, and you don't have to worry about when you sold through the other items, and you can start pushing those in-house specials. You want to make sure that you have all your contact names and phone numbers for all your vendors at your fingertips. Now for us, we have, it's called a playbook, and essentially it has all the information I'm talking about with you this afternoon in there that I can quickly access. And even all of our directions are written in plain, step 1, do this, step 2, tie your shoes, step 3, so that anybody on staff can take care of it. I can say, go to the playbook and get the phone number for XYZ vendor, and call them and see if they have pink peonies. And another staff member can do that. That's possibly a high school student. The last thing on the creative backup plan, or not the last thing, but the most important thing on the backup plan, is to schedule a cooler equipment check. Generally we do this on a quarterly basis, but we schedule those quarterly basis so that we hit the majority of the 2 major holidays 2 weeks prior. I want to have my cooler company come in, check out the equipment, make sure everything's fine and working well. We know of 2 different refrigerator truck companies in a local town that we can get the refrigerated truck in case our cooler breaks down. And the third is preparing a planogram. I know planogram sounds, oh my gosh, I have to sit down with, drafting table and figure this out. But essentially, it's just a quick sketch that we kind of do. In the past, when we had coolers break down in our older building, we had a bathroom that nobody used, and we would put a air conditioner unit in there and cool it down to like 58 degrees, and that was our backup storage. So I'm always amazed because there was early on in the 80s, there was a gentleman in Connecticut, I think it was, and I was at some meeting and talking to him, and I was outraged at how much he had to pay per square foot. And of course, in Florida, our square footage was a lot less expensive than what he was paying for commercial shop rent. And one of the things I found fascinating was he did like 4 times the volume my store did out of a third of the size. And when I questioned about it, he talked about alternative planograms for his thing, how he hung things, how he moved this in the cooler and kept this outside the cooler. And he went through before a holiday and decided where everything was going to go. So that's actually a great way to do a backup plan. If you don't have a huge location, don't have a backup, 2-cooler system, then you can actually look at areas within your that are already existing that you clean up or move the stuff to your garage for the week so that you have that additional storage. Or even if you just clean it up and you'll have additional storage. For the website, before the backup plan for that is we generally review and limit our product selection before the holiday. We, in that playbook that I was talking about, we want to make sure that we know how to suspend our website or put a notification on the website. We're still taking orders for delivered locally. Please give us a call so that they're not picking something on the website in another area. Again, limiting your product selection, know how to suspend your website. Along with that, you're going to want to make sure that you know how to suspend your Mercury, Dove, or any other transmission system. But prior to the holiday, as part of your backup plan or your preparation, you really want to contact your wire services, member services, and double check what zip codes you do service. If 20 years ago when you signed up as a member of FTD and you saw that you delivered out to Ethiopiaville and you didn't realize that you were still coded for that, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the holiday you get an order that goes for 70 miles out of your way that you used to live out there, so you would take it on your way home, but now you don't. Well, review those prior to the holiday. Be proactive about problem solving, and this is one way to do it. The other thing I would recommend is know how to suspend your zip codes during the holiday. And as you can see on the screen, this is where you would send the general message to or email to. So if during the holiday, which is wonderful about the transmission process through a lot of the wire service like Mercury, Dove, or any of them, is that you can go in and you can say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do those outerlying areas anymore. I'm just going to do my local town for the rest of the holiday because I don't want to miss out on those orders. I can produce it and get them delivered, but I don't want to keep going out to Ethiopiaville, 3 times a day and kill 4 hours worth of delivery time. So quick and easily know in your playbook how to contact the wire services, whomever they are, and be able to shut down those zip codes during mass confusion of the holidays. The last in preparation is your homework plan. So the 4 top things that I would pick for homework for preparation is restock, prepare, hold a staff meeting, and create a backup plan or a playbook that has all the information in it. We've prepared. Now it's management's time. What we need to do is organize our designs, get the delivery set up ready, and the last thing you'll do as management is complete a post-holiday survey. We're going to talk a little bit about organizing designs. If you don't have a point-of-sale system, or even if you do, I would recommend that you kind of track your workload. And part of that for us is just is technology. But for you is essentially kind of, even if you can't sort your orders, get one of those little plastic trays that they sell at the office store that stack and mark on them, these are vases, these are roses, these are plants, whatever, and just stack the orders as they come in those trays so that you can visually see how many orders you have and in what categories you have them that you need to generate. And of course for us, we usually stay 3 to 4 days ahead on the holiday. One of the best tools, and this is a gift I was given from another florist, an idea, as you can see on your screen, we use these sleeves. They are a fiber sleeve, very inexpensive. I apologize, I don't have the name of the sleeve company. It's R&D sleeves, I believe it is. And they ship us these sleeves in bulk. It's like $60, and that gets us usually through 2 or 3 holidays. And every arrangement wake we sleeve for several reasons. The reason for that is that when they're sleeved, the flowers themselves do not get damaged when we put them in the cooler. Now remember, we're making these with dried product that have been dry packed product. We put them in, they're arranged, and we put them in there. We put the sleeve on. Now we notate what type of arrangement it is. It's an arrangement vase, and it's the large size. Then when the orders come in and staff goes, oh, we sold a large vase and it has 1 red rose, they can stick this red rose in there, and then they can take the card and staple it to it. Now how we organize this for drivers is you'll notice this little blue and red dot. That blue dot tells the driver that this is Palm Bay, meaning this delivery goes to the Palm Bay area. So when we print out their delivery sheet or write it out, whoever you choose to do it, on the top of that sheet's a blue dot, and they know they're looking for blue dots. So all of their deliveries are blue dotted. This little red dot tells them that it's a time delivery. There's time sensitivity to it. So when they're reading their delivery routing sheets, they'll look for this red dot and go, okay, this is a time delivery. It's going to a high school. I need to have it there by 2. It'll already show up on the routing sheet, but this is just another way to check and cross-check to make sure that they understand that that's a time delivery. When we use technology, we make sure that the great thing about using a POS system is that orders don't get misplaced. I can remember years ago someone would go and look up an arrangement in the design book, the recipe for it, and they looked it up and they got sidetracked, and someone else came along and closed the book, and all of a sudden an order for a customer for Mother's Day is stuck in this recipe book, and nobody knows about it. Well, with technology, you don't misplace those orders. For tracking the codified container sell out, we use the technology for that as well, but a simpler way to do that is generally what we do is we will do labels, and if we have 50 of a container, we'll do number of the labels 1 through 50. As we sell that container, we pull off label 50 and we stick it on the ticket, the invoice where we sold it, and that way now we know we have 49 labels, we have 49 containers. We sleeve and label the arrangements similar to this, and we use the colored dots. Now that we've taken a look at organizing designs somewhat manually, we can also look at how we can organize those through a POS system. And for me, I actually love the fact that the Mercury POS system can give me all that information in one quick step. And I'm going to choose the designer code here and pull up a day. And unfortunately, if I pull up today, it'll probably tell me we're all done with the orders. Oh, there's one sitting out there. But if we choose today, and we're just going to look at the orders for today. And the great thing about this is at one quick shot, you can see what has to be done today. If I want to send some of these drivers to the outer lying areas, I can sort this by zone. I can sort it by priority, meaning if there are all-time deliveries and it's the middle of Valentine's Day and I'm going, oh, I need to get these businesses out, I can sort it by priority and go, okay, I need to get these 5 arrangements finished. I can sort it by product if I choose to. It gives me a quick view of what needs to be done that day, and it also allows me to make sure that I'm not getting oversold at any given time. So for us, that technology works really, really well. And if you don't have a POS system, I think that you'll find the holidays a little bit easier to handle if you do bite the bullet and get one. Now, I put this one in here because I know everybody hates assembly line. Every time I talk to florists, they're like, oh, I don't want to do anything assembly line. Well, the reason I put this slide in here is because I really wanted to give you a prime example of the amount of time savings. I'm not really going to go through this calculation here. You're welcome to download it or view this webinar again on FTD University. But in these 5 steps, I calculate the amount of time it's going to take to do an assembly line. And as you can tell, to do these 70 arrangements, doing it assembly line is going to take me 211 minutes. If I employ designers to do these, even if they're doing them at multiples of 3, it's going to take them 10 minutes per design, meaning 700 minutes. So the difference is I'm taking 211 minutes to 700 minutes, meaning I can do these 70 pieces in a third of the time if I do an assembly line. So with that said, I would recommend that this is the way we do assembly line. We set up the containers. We use 3 to 4 live people. These can be people who are just breathing, because I'm really just going to ask them to put 2 lilies in a vase, one here, one there. They have a sample sitting in front of them. I use one designer on an assembly line at all times, and that designer is usually the last person who touches the piece so that they can make sure everything's in where it needs to be. And I'm going to give only one product to each person. I want that one person to know, okay, I'm just using lilies, and I'm using 2 lilies, and I'm putting in point A and point B. They're to always start at the same container, so they would start here and move in this rotation. And always in that same spot so one vase doesn't get forgotten it's lilies. And the last thing is people move, not the containers. Really important. Now, if you're not a firm believer in an assembly line, then I really invite you to try it now during the summer. Try it once or twice, kind of get used to it, see where the pitfalls are, and see if you like it. We use it to stock our cooler all the time. Friday afternoon, we were running behind. Saturday's orders weren't finished. We went ahead and ran a real quick assembly line. In less than 30 minutes, we had all the orders for Saturday caught back up. So talking about we've managed those designs, let's look at managing deliveries. And a couple helpful hints I'd like to share with you is to create a cell phone list of all your temporary drivers. Extremely important. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had a customer call in and go, oh, your driver was just here and he's gone, and I'm home now, and can you deliver it like right away because I want to go out and get an ice cream sundae. And oh gosh, and you're going, oh my gosh, which driver had it? Well, with our delivery system, we can essentially tell, but the first couple years we did that, it was great that I could tell who had the delivery, but I'd always forget to get their cell phone numbers so I could call them and say, oh, you were just at so-and-so's house at 2:04, are you still in the area, can you run it back by? And because they're getting paid per delivery, they were happy to do that because they'd only get paid when the delivery's been made. We also provide our temporary drivers with a special phone number that only they call in on, whether it's a separate phone line in your store. For me, I use a cell phone number that just sits with the person who's handling routing, which in a lot of cases is me. But that cell phone number, that way they can bypass your busy phone lines. They can get directly to the person they need. Setting zones for delivery in advance, you'll know once you start tracking this information what zones are heaviest, what are not, so that you can assign them to specific drivers or know how many drivers you need for specific zones. But go ahead and draw those out on a map. In the old days, we used to do the maps on pieces of styrofoam and put little corsage pins in them. If that helps you by doing a test run now, by putting a map on and see where your consolidation is, And I think the reason I'm saying that is a lot of times we think things are different than what they are. When you look at actual numbers, by pulling the orders from last year, or if you have a POS system and actually looking at them, I think you'll be very enlightened to what things actually are compared to what we think they are. So if you always think, oh gosh, my local town, I do a lot of them in, when you start to look at that information, you may find that there's another area of town that you can excel in that maybe is 4 minutes away, and that's where the primary quantity of your deliveries are being done. The other thing is, once our drivers stagger in the morning, they'll start at 7:30, between 7:15 and 7:30, the first drivers will come in. And we have about 20, 25 drivers at the main store. They'll come in and they'll start like at 7, like 2 or 3 of them at 7. The next person comes in at 7:15. So we don't have 25 drivers all at one time trying to get their deliveries pulled for the holiday if they haven't been pre-pulled the night before. Once those drivers go and are out, we start pulling new routes. And the reason for that is so when a driver comes back, you've got 2 or 3 routes ready to go for the next 3 drivers that return. So you're being very proactive, not waiting for them to come back and then pull the routes. When we manage delivery with technology, I like the POS system with Mercury because I can see at a glance what delivery zones we have, what's unfinished in design. So if I've got a zone that I've got 20 pieces going out in and 3 of them are not finished, then I can certainly finish those 3 and get that zone out of there, especially if it's a time delivery. I can increase the speed of delivery because it's downloaded to a GPS, and it'll download to most of my temporary drivers' GPS, or it gives them driving directions. It has saved me so much gas. Our gas bill dropped about 10%. And it also allows me to know when I'm close to capacity. One of the scariest things I think I ever heard was Kuhn's in Jacksonville, which I think is a fabulous florist. One time I can remember hearing through the grapevine that they had actually years and years and years and years and years ago had gotten overrun with deliveries on a holiday. And I always live in terror of that. They actually were smart enough and facilitated a real quick fix on it. I'm not that smart, so I love the fact that I can look at the Mercury delivery technology and be able to see at a glance if I'm getting close to capacity. Am I close to last year's numbers? Do I have enough drivers to do that? I can look immediately, see if there's any time deliveries that are out there, and once the routes return, I get automatic delivery confirmation. And the best thing about it is I can prevent deliveries on the wrong day. It's extremely amazing. Let me just give you a quick shot of that. We won't really go into it because it's pretty self-explanatory. But what's great about it is that I can see at a glance what needs to be delivered when, if there's any priorities sitting out there, and how many deliveries are not designed, how many are ready to go, how many are not delivered, and then, of course, how many that are delivered. It's real self-explanatory, but the great thing about it is they do give 100% driving instructions, which I think is so fabulous, or it downloads to the GPS. So it's a great tool in managing delivery. And delivery, let's face it, is the biggest thorn in our side at holidays. We have gotten through the sales process, we have designed, we have gotten them delivered, and the holiday is over, and we're all going, oh, thank heaven for small favors. You're still not done. What you need to do after the holiday is to create a diary. I have a diary that goes back to 1982, and it's really just a synopsis of the holiday. You'll decide what information you need to keep, but for me, because delivery is the thorn in my side, I want to know what drivers I used, what days they worked, and what quantity of deliveries they made. I look at what worked and what didn't work. Did the dots on the sleeves work well? And once I know that works well, then the next year I know I'm going to do it again. And all of that stuff is contained in that synopsis, what marketing I used and how many, if it worked well. I know a good example of that was one year we used, which was another florist had mentioned to me, inserts into our local newspaper. And I went, nah, I've used newspaper advertising. I'm not going to do that. And I actually used it, and it just shocked me. And so that was one of the things that was in the synopsis of the holiday. And so the next year I knew to use it again. And after that, I think it's important to acknowledge all your staff and temporary workers. I know it sounds kind of, old Southern Belle type thing to send a thank you note, because the old saying, be as ugly as you want to as long as you follow up with a thank you note, is so true. And let's face it, we're all going to be ugly and short-tempered during the holidays, so I think it's a good idea to send a thank you note to all your staff and anyone that helped out during the holiday. And the last thing to remember is that it's great on an everyday basis. We may get a complaint once every, once a month maybe. But at a holiday, look at the volume. I often tell when I do career day the kids, I say, well, to give you an idea of what the flower business is like, it's a wonderful business to be in, but let's look at holidays. At holidays, it's kind of like your homework. On a regular day, you may get 3 to 5 pieces of homework. If you get 3 pieces of homework, so that's 5 days, 15 pieces in a week, so that's 60 pieces in a month. Let's take every bit of that 60 pieces of homework, and you have to do that tonight and hand it in tomorrow. And, of course, they all gasp and go, no, no, no. Think about it. That's us at a holiday. And if you take that kind of volume and put it into a very short period of time, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to get a complaint. Even if you are 100% accurate, what's going to end up happening is someone's going to complain because you put red carnations in their vase and they hate red carnations, even though nobody told you they hated red carnations. So the thing to remember is just to smile and look at those complaints as an opportunity to improve your service. Look at the trends of them. So we've looked at the post-holiday, and your last homework assignment to successful holiday is to, over this summer, if you do not use assembly line, I invite you to organize one and try it within the store. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how well it works. Look at your delivery processes and track your codified container sales so that you can sell them out to sell out and create that yearly diary for review. Now, I know that I've talked about a lot of information, and a lot of it you may think, oh, that's a lot of trouble. But again, as I mentioned before, this is stuff that I've added over 25, 30 years of owning the flower shop. And so if you can just start with a few of those things, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how successful your holiday will become inch by inch. It's not about perfection. It is about progress. And if you have any questions or like copies of anything that I've talked about today, you are more than welcome to email me at tinastoecker@yahoo.com. And if you will put in the subject line that you are a florist so that I will, know that you are not spam and delete you, because that's so rude to delete a person because they think you think they're spam. All of the handouts will be online at ftd.com under the education. And then, of course, if you want to review this webinar, you are more than welcome to do that at the ftduniversity.com. It has been a pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and if you have any questions, hopefully you've written down the slide number and we can discuss them at this point. Janet, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Tina, thank you so much for sharing a wealth of great information with us today. We are now open for questions, so if you have a question, simply type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen. We will take the questions in the order they are received. And it looks like the first question that we have, Tina, is from Eleanor. Eleanor wants to know how to handle time deliveries from your website.
Oh, that's an excellent question. On our website, we do list that we do have express delivery available and that there is an additional fee for that. So I personally believe that anytime you add that additional service, it's kind of like if I want to mail a letter to my daughter, it costs me 40-some cents, but if I want to send it overnight, it's going to cost me 17. So I believe that you should list on your website that you do carry express delivery and that there be an additional charge for it, and you can deem that, and I think you'll come to find that a lot of people will decide that they don't need it there, they just need it by close of business day.
All righty then, thank you. Our next question comes from Bonnie, and she wants to know what your labor what is your labor markup? She said she's currently doing 20% markup. Is that standard?
Yes, that is industry standard. When I gave the recommendation of the $250, we actually use for everyday work, and that's not funeral or wedding work, but everyday work we use a $8.75 flat fee on everything. But the industry standard and the best benchmark I would give you would be that 20%. She's correct.
All right. And our next question is from Marcia. She wants to know, what is the lowest quantity to make the assembly line beneficial? 10, 100?
Oh, well, usually about 6 to 8 is the minimum that I would do on an assembly line. And but usually when you're producing for a holiday, like our branch store, they may only produce like 35 to 50 pieces. They may use, instead of that 3 to 4 people, they may use 2 to 3 people. So the quantity of people changes based on the quantity of units that you need to produce.
All right. And our next question is from Karen. She said she's had some problems with filling containers with dry foam. How do you soak foam in containers without creating airlocks?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Generally, like with the baskets, we put the glue the floral foam in there. Make sure that the dots on the floral foam are open, meaning don't glue it dot side down. And then we have a soaking bucket. We drop the liner in the bucket. If it's a ceramic container, you're going to drop that in there. If you're doing something in glass, I would recommend that you put masking tape and or electrical tape on the bottom of the glass, and then you glue the floral foam to the tape on the glass. If it's a keepsake container, I would recommend that process as well because you do not damage the keepsake container. And the problem with using glass and ceramic and some of the keepsake containers that are ceramic is that once you glue to it, if you don't use the tape, it will pop off when it gets cold. So the soaking portion is just dropping it in. We use a 5-gallon bucket that our crystal clear comes in. We fill it with crystal clear and water, and we just drop the containers in there.
All right, great. Our next question is from Guillermo. He wants to know what happens if you run out of a color of roses and a customer doesn't answer on time. Should you put the order on hold or send another color?
Oh, that's a great question. Generally, during the sales process is when we, and I'm not quite sure whether he's talking about a local order or an out-of-town order. The two things that I would recommend is one part of our sales script is when they're asking the customer information, is there a phone number we can reach you at in case we have a quick question on your order? And usually they will give you the cell phone number. The problem is a lot of times during the sales process, they'll say if you already have them in your database, you just assume the phone number you have on your database is the one you can reach them at. And that's why during the sales process it's extremely important. Is there a phone number I can reach you at in case I've got a quick question? I can't reiterate that enough. I do that to the staff all the time. And the reason for that is to solve those last-minute issues, last-minute hiccups. Second, I would recommend that any time that you take an order, because a lot of times you can be taking that order well in advance, like a week to 2 weeks before Valentine's Day, and they want purple roses. And you're going, well, gosh, I can get purple roses anytime. Comes to the day before the holiday, and you can't get purple roses anywhere. You're going to want to make sure you have a backup plan, a second choice on that color of roses. Third, if both of those things fail, if those two things fail, I think it is always much better to choose a similar color and not just anything that you have and send it out. It's better to apologize and let them know that you couldn't reach them. And if you have done due diligence in trying to get a hold of them, contact them in a timely manner and have given them a second choice up front and you couldn't get first and second choice, I think they'd certainly understand that it was much better to get the arrangement delivered than not to send anything at all.
All right, great. Our next question, we've got a few questions here, so let's try and get to them all. Cheryl wants to know, how much extra do you charge for express delivery?
Oh, well, it depends upon what kind of a pain in the, I'm sorry, no, that's probably not the rest. Actually, if they need to designate a morning or afternoon, so they're blocking it down to, an AM or PM delivery, we charge $19.99. If they want to narrow it any further than that, it's $29.99. If it is a late incoming order, like they call it 3 o'clock, and they need it there by 4:30, 5 o'clock, so within an hour, it goes up to $39.99. So it graduates in cost. There's a wonderful matrix that we have on file here that I actually learned from a florist in, I think, North Carolina, and I'd be happy to, if she emails me, I'd be happy to share that with her. But it's really interesting because it shows the time of day the customer wants it and then what the delivery cost is. So you look at the time of day they place the order and when they want it delivered, and it gives you in that little Excel sheet what price you should charge. In addition to that, we allow staff, if a customer calls in and wants something delivered after 6 or 7 o'clock, after our closing hours or before our closing hours, the staff has the authority to charge whatever they deem necessary for that express delivery, and then anything over X amount of fees they take home. So we always try to never say no, but we also have to understand that can't have a driver driving from 20 miles this way to hit a time delivery and 20 miles this way to do a time delivery. So that's one of the reasons we have the express delivery, and we graduate them based on the shortness of time the client gives us to get it delivered.
All righty. Karen has a question. She wants to know how long can you keep the fresh arrangements in the sleeve stored in the refrigerator?
Oh, as long as you need to. They're fiber sleeves, so they breathe. The flowers do not, it's not like a plastic sleeve where they'll start to mold or have a problem. They're fiber and they're breathable. So generally they stay in our cooler about a week and a half.
All right. Bonnie wants to know, what do you suggest paying temporary drivers?
Generally, we take our standard delivery fee, and we take off about 30 to 35% off, and that's what we pay the drivers. Our regular delivery fee is $9.95, and we currently pay our drivers $6 per package.
All righty. Lydia has a question on page 8. Talks about downsizing selections at the holiday. She said they do that in-house, but how can they prepare for all the picky wire orders that they get on the day of the holiday?
Well, that's what those last 2 days of holiday prep is doing those oddball designs. And I'm not sure I have a good solution for that, but the way to start reducing them is to limit those product selections on your sales and on your website. And I don't know, and I apologize, I don't have an answer to that question as far as whether you can limit the products that you receive via the wire service or not. You can certainly tell when you're sold out of a product, or you could do product not available, and I'm not sure whether the wire service would no longer send you that product item.
All right.
So I don't have a good question answer for that one.
Okay. All right. Well, Melissa is new to FTD, and she lives in a small area. She is wondering how does she choose what containers to order for the holiday season?
Well, if she's new, it's going to be difficult because she's not going to have tracking information. I would suggest be extremely cautious. For me, if I would normally choose like the first 2 codified items, like a C1 and C2. Unless you can, of course, if you've got someone in a neighboring town that you can split cases with, I would recommend you doing that. But be very, very cautious about the containers that you select. Normally the C1s and the C2s will sell through relatively quickly. And if they don't, then you can start pushing them for your everyday local customers, which is something I didn't mention that we do here. Is generally we save those C1s and C2s for wire orders, and although our customers get that information, it just helps us to sell through that way. But C1, C2, any of the first and second generally will sell through you relatively quickly. Locate a florist in a town that's either neighboring that you don't service, and see if you can split the cases with them.
All right, great. And Donna wants to know, what's your source for the fiber sleeves, and do they come in different sizes?
Yes, they do come in several different sizes, and it's R&D sleeves, and if she sends me an email, I will give them their phone number. They are located all over the U.S.
All righty. And Marcia has a follow-up when we were discussing the delivery charges. She said the wire-ins specify times, but they don't allow extra delivery. How do you handle that?
If I don't think it's going to be a push, then I just go ahead and do it. If I think it's going to be a push, then I will message the florist back and say, you've requested a specific time delivery. We can certainly do it. The delivery fee needs to be increased to this amount.
All right. Well, that looks like that's all of our questions today. We've had some really great questions. We want to thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. If you missed a portion of the webinar and would like to listen to it again, a replay will be available on FTD University. Handouts and homework assignments will be available at ftdi.com/education. An email will be sent to you when everything is available for you to view and download. The next FTD e-learning workshop is scheduled for Wednesday, October 26th. Tim Huckabee with Floral Strategies will be sharing tips to boost your profits. Registration will be available later this week on ftdi.com, so be sure to watch for future emails to include the registration details. Again, thank you to Tina for sharing such great information to help us prepare for successful and profitable holiday. We will be sending you a survey to gather your feedback on today's webinar. Please complete the survey as we will utilize your input to help improve future webinars and other education programs for you. This concludes FTD's e-learning workshop on preparing for successful holiday season. Thank you.